Welcome, LA Progressive friends and family and readers and listeners. This is Sharon Kyle here, and I'm having a conversation with Donna Tryfman. And Donna is running to be a Los Angeles Superior Court judge. And as you guys know, the LA Progressive writes a lot about judicial races and just the whole concept of judicial races. So we're really pleased that Donna has agreed to join us and talk to us about her run. Before I begin, let me just tell you a little bit about her. She is a veteran Los Angeles public defender with decades of experience in the criminal legal system, and she's currently serving in the Major Cases Unit of the Los Angeles County Public Defender's Office. In addition to her trial work, she has held leadership roles within the Public Defender's Office, including serving as deputy in charge of East Lake Juvenile Court, where she supervised attorneys and worked in collaborative court settings and a bunch of other stuff. She's got a long career, and she's going to talk to us about that. So welcome, Donna. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining me.
Sharon. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I think we clicked immediately when we met. And so it's really a pleasure to be here and be able to speak about a judicial race to your listeners and viewers.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you know this. When
Mhm.
we go to every 2 years or every 6 years, however often people go to the polls, in California, we have the opportunity to elect judges, and it's so challenging. Now, you've spent basically your entire career as a public defender, but now you're seeking to become a judge. So tell us why and why now?
Would be my pleasure. So, to be a public defender, first of all, is a calling. You have to have a certain heart and a certain soul to be able to immerse yourself in the lives of other people, to be empathetic, but you also have to be resilient because being a public defender is actually a hard job. It has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. It is an honor to be able to help people at the worst moments of their lives. It is an honor to represent and uphold and ensure that our constitutional ideals, our democratic values and principles are actually adhered to in a court setting. After all this time as a public defender, learning what I have learned in my service, I want to make sure, and I want to be a judge because I want to give meaning to the actual constitutional principles. It would be a judge who decides regarding the efficacy of certain constitutional violations, whether they exist or don't exist. And I want to be that person since I have so much experience and judgment, and I've seen what works and doesn't work in a courtroom. My life has been about public service. I believe in public service. I found my place in public service. Being a judge would continue that desire and that calling for public service, but I would actually be able to make even more meaningful contributions to upholding constitutional principles in a courtroom. Make sure that the police are doing it correctly, make sure that the government is doing it correctly, and also make sure that the defense is also doing it correctly and making sure that everyone is treated fairly. So that's why I'm looking to be a judge now. As you mentioned, I am in the Major Cases Unit of my office, where I handle special circumstance, homicide, capital litigation. Many think of that as the apex of a criminal defense career. It's very important work. We don't know what the landscape of California will bring in the future. I believe in the work, but I would like to try to lend my hand and my experience and judgment as a bench officer, as a neutral, not as an advocate at this time.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because as a public defender, you are an advocate. And there would be a definite shift in your perspective as a judge, because as a judge, you'd be responsible for upholding a system that as a public defender, you challenged. So how do
Right.
you reconcile that shift?
So, I wanted to make sure that I could do this job. And so I actually applied for an appointment through the Los Angeles Superior Court to become a volunteer judge. It's a judge pro tem program where the Superior Court, they just don't have enough people to run certain courts, traffic, small claims. Those kinds of courts, unlawful detainers. And I became certified in that. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years. So I know that I can sit as a neutral. I've sat as the neutral and as a judge in traffic and small claims. And people think, oh, that's minor. But those are really the cases that concern people and that's where they have the contact with the court system. So I have a proven temperament in those situations. Um, Being an advocate has been very, very rewarding to me. I know I can be a neutral because I volunteered. I made sure that I could do it and do it fairly. And I know that I can. I've also acted in another quasi-judicial position. I was in a rent stabilization commission, and during COVID, we actually heard certain landlord-tenant cases. So that it's a personal interest of mine is housing and housing affordability and relationships between landlords and tenants, especially in the metropolis of Los Angeles, because our cost of living is so expensive. So I got involved in that. And I was very much able to be a neutral arbiter. Along with my interest in being a judge and giving meaning to constitutional principles, I know that I can do it because I've been doing it for a little bit as a volunteer.
So, after years as a public defender, what would you say is the single biggest failure of the system that you've witnessed?
There's several, honestly. Our system is rife with systemic inequities. We don't service our marginalized communities, I think, in the best manner that we can. We over police certain communities. We don't have effective community interventions. There's not every situation requires necessarily a police intervention, I believe. I think that certain situations, mental health, um, traumas and mental health emergencies, I think are sometimes better served by a PET team, which is a psychiatric emergency team. I think that they're calling it something different in the city. I think there's efforts to bring that out. So I think that our system has often been very black and white. And what happens in human relations and human incidents and crimes is that we live in the gray area. Nothing is ever one extreme or another. That's where I've lived as a public defender. That is what I think needs to be brought a little bit more to the forefront of our court system.
So, judges and attorneys are driven by very different legal limits. So, what specifically can a judge do differently within the limits that are imposed upon a judge differently than that of a public defender?
So, as we discussed earlier, it's a very different role to be a judge than it is to be a public defender. As a public defender, I'm an advocate. As a judge, I'm a neutral arbiter. As a public defender, I'm also required to operate within the confines of the law. But I can push those confines of the law to try to convince a judge or a prosecutor or a jury of interpreting the law as I see it. As a judge, I would be the final say in the interpretation of the actual law. I would have to operate within the confines of the law, but in places where I have discretion, that's where certain lived personal and professional experiences come into play. So, for instance, in appropriate cases where appropriate mitigation has been shown, I would definitely consider diversionary sentences or dispositions as opposed to penal dispositions where somebody's liberty would be lost. And that's something that I bring from a lifelong of professional experience as a public defender. I've seen how certain restorative and rehabilitative dispositions have helped the youth and the juveniles because we have up to the age of 25 with youth because their brains are not fully formed. So I've seen when there's appropriate interventions, inappropriate cases within the confines of the law, how favorable that is to change someone's life. And I think as a judge, at times when I have those discretions, and if I can do it within the law, I would favor a restorative or a rehabilitative kind of disposition, because I don't think that people should be thrown away and not be given chances. On the other hand, there are certain cases, for instance, some of the cases and incidents that I deal with in the major cases unit, where the incidents are so serious and so violent that it does require confinement. And there are no options within the law other than confinement. So those types of situations the judgment must happen on a case by case basis. Individual circumstances must be taken into account. Mitigating and aggravating factors must be taken into account. And that is the only way to reach a just and whole decision.
Great, great. Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I think that it's really important that we adhere to the law, but sometimes it doesn't seem like we get just outcomes when we do that. But I do appreciate that your experience as a public defender helps you to see things from a different lens than if you had spent 30 years as a prosecutor. Now, speaking of
Absolutely.
that, speaking of that, 2022 was the first time in Los Angeles County history that we had a public defender run a campaign and win to be seated on the Los Angeles Superior Court, and that would have been Holly Hancock. And then
Yes.
we did it again a couple of years later with George Turner and Erica Wiley. And I can't remember if there was another person, but I interviewed all three of those people. So I'm hoping that that I'm developing a track record here.
I hope so.
As we close, I want you to give me your sense of why it's really important that we have public defenders, that we have some balance on the bench, not just prosecutors, but why does it make a difference to come from a background as a public defender?
That's a very important question. First of all, shout out to Judge Hancock, Judge Turner, and Judge Wiley. I'm incredibly proud of them. I get chills when I think that I'm walking in their footsteps, that they did what I'm doing now. Quite frankly, they were the trailblazers for public defenders to run on the bench, because as you know, in the past, you've been involved with this and following it for so many years. Public defenders would not run for the bench. It was the purview of the prosecutors. And why that's so important is that we have especially in Los Angeles, it's such a diverse city and community that we need representation from every community. And one of those communities is the public defender's office. And women are still actually underrepresented on the bench in Los Angeles. So, someone who brings a diverse lived experience and a diverse personal experience is always going to be more thoughtful than someone who has blinders on and has only done one thing in their life, which is what's so important. To have people on the bench that have different ideas and different maybe outlooks and experiences, because they're able to understand certain things when maybe a certain litigant comes before them, maybe that a prosecutor doesn't understand. So it's very, very important to have a diverse community of judges that will exercise discretion in a fair, balanced, and personal way with each litigant. As a public defender, I think more so than a prosecutor, I am uniquely situated in a courtroom because I have to communicate and interact with the judge, the defendant, the victims, witnesses, law enforcement, their families. So a public defender has a unique perspective into the stories and the feelings and what different players in the system bring to the system. So I think that my personal opinion is that public defenders are wonderful candidates and should be considered as very qualified candidates to sit on the bench.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. To tell you the truth, when Holly Hancock ran and won, and I discovered that that was the first time in an election. Now, I just wrote a piece talking about how the vast majority of judges in California are appointed by the governor. And then after that appointment, they've served their time as an appointed, they run, then they are incumbents. And so oftentimes when we go and we vote for a judge, we're typically voting for someone who is already holding the seat, and that gives them a huge advantage. But for someone that is just coming out of the chute and running first, it's amazing and it's difficult. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to the LA progressive community. We always support balance, and I think it's the work that you've done over the last 30 years is really admirable. I take
Thank
my
you, Sharon. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you to say. It's important to me, the work ethic, the people, the humanity of public defense is important to me. It's part of my makeup as a person and as a lawyer. So
Well, again, Donna, we wish you the best,
thank you.
and we'll stay in touch.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much.
All right, Donna Tryfman, running for Los Angeles Superior Court. What is the office number?
It's Office 131. And I am the only woman running in that race, by the way. So
Great. That's a good thing. Good thing to remember. All right.
yes,
Thank you so much. Best of luck to
thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.